sometimes the writing can be on the wall. We can infer things, can't we? And the worry is, you know, when you've got Wuthering Waves and you've got Genshin and devs overreacting, you know, we saw it with Wuthering Waves, you know, we saw it with the story, what they did there. You had Genshin with its, you know, light-hearted, Disney-fied stuff. Wuthering Waves came along, bit darker, little bit, you know, I hate using the term mature, as if like light-hearted stuff can't be mature, but let's just use that in replace of something else. And people didn't like that, so they're hard reverted and went the opposite way. And I think it did a disservice to the game. So I can understand the worry of that happening. I think it's a very reasonable thing to be worried about. But on the other hand, I am very, very excited about this game, and I'm hopeful that they're going to do the right thing. This one came up on my feed. Chat's made me more interested now in the comments. From Tobaruo, I believe. This is the death knell of gacha games, Arknights Endfield. And the thumbnails got me. I'm like, I don't know if this is a positive or a negative towards Enfield as gacha as a whole. I'm kind of curious. It's got a decent amount of likes, so points must be valid. Let's see what this video's all about then, shall we, guys? Because I'm very much intrigued now. If you haven't already, guys, go check out the content creator. We're going to give it a preemptive like. And if it's a good video, we'll subscribe at the end. All right, let's get into it. Okay, dramatic intro.
Much can be said with certainty about Arknights Endfield after its beta test. It's got huge potential, it's going to be very popular, and this...
See, I hope it's going to be very popular. I do hope it's going to be very popular. You can never say for fact, can you? I do think the base building is going to filter a lot of people. I do. And I think there's always going to be... I definitely think there's going to be the Wuthering Waves part of the space that's going to come over and be like, oh, the combat sucks. I know it's going to happen. But I'm confident. I'm quietly confident this game's going to be, like, it's going to do well because it deserves it at least anyway, in my opinion.
This NPC is really sorry.
Really sorry. Really
Yo, what's up, Danny?
Really sorry. Really sorry.
Having played the full duration of the beta, I can confidently say that Arknights Endfield has the potential to define a whole new generation of gacha games.
Big statement. Big statement. I somewhat agree. I do believe it has the potential to push the genre forward. I think Wuthering Waves has to a degree. I think it could have gone a step further. Wuthering Waves could have. I still think a lot of gacha games are too attached to the Hoyo factor of doing things, that way of doing things. So hopefully we continue to see these iterations. But I agree. I think this is, you know, I think this is right. It's a big statement though. It's a big statement.
That is not an exaggeration. But I really must emphasize the word potential.
Okay.
Because right now, I am increasingly worried that potential may never end up being realized.
Okay,
that very same
interesting.
potential could also turn the game into the biggest disappointment I've ever experienced in all my years of playing games.
Okay, all right, this dude must be incredibly hyped for the game then, or he's just gassing it up to be something that it's not. We do have to remember this sometimes as gamers. We can do this a lot, can't we? We can turn a game into something that it was never supposed to be in our headcanon, and we're always going to be disappointed. But that's a big... There's a lot of big statements here. A lot of big statements.
Firstly, though, I really need to get the glazing out of my system, so let's just get that out of the way, shall we? There is so much that I fucking love about Enfield. Literally, from the moment you open the game, it hits you with the... Arknights. God, it's so good. Harking back to its roots, announcing itself to the world before greeting you with peak music just for the login screen.
True. Man, this takes me back to the start of the playtest, man. I had such a good time. Such a good time with this playtest chat.
The satisfaction of seeing all the sprawling factory belts come together, customizing
the machine must grow.
Zip lines, the activity in the Dijang with your operators working and saying hello.
You're here, Administrator. How's your day?
The view of Talos 2
Dad
from the
Panda.
Nexus, the phenomenal sound design.
Yeah. The sound design is great in the game. But after now experiencing what Arknights has had to offer on the music side of things, it's not surprising that the game absolutely killed it on the sound design.
Karmic justice!
The eerie environment and music of Valley 4.
The environmental design as well is gorgeous in the game. Like, I'll probably spend a lot of time glazing in this video, chat.
The gorgeous environment and music of Jinlong.
Yeah. Absolutely stunning. Is it the... I've heard some people say by far it's the best looking gacha game. Is it? Like, Wuthering Waves is a very pretty game. It's like, for me, they are the two best looking games, right? There's sometimes, though, I catch myself in Wuthering Waves and I'm like, damn, especially on the high-end PC, I'm like, that looks really freaking good. There was a lot of that in Enfield as well. I don't know, I'm kind of torn. I think sometimes Enfield looks better, then other times Wuthering Waves looks better. I don't know.
And the headhunting, oh my good lord, the headhunting. The music on the banner screen gets you all excited as if you're preparing for a rocket launch. You click the button, you hear those distant scintillations, and then...
This is getting me pumped for the game, you know, chat. This is getting me pumped for the game. Not that I need it, because I was already pumped anyway.
The best summoning experience in any gacha game I've ever played.
Big statement. Oh, I don't know if that's actually true, though. It is a really good summoning sequence, because that's a big thing for me. I know it's dumb, because a lot of the time the gacha element is the part, it's the predatory part, right? And I get it, I understand that's why it gets my monkey brain going. But I usually like to, like, you know, when I do a summon, I'm like, okay, I'm a big, you know what, I pay attention to that. It's a good summoning sequence, though. It is good.
Not even close.
What do you reckon is the best summoning sequence, chat? Summoning animation, whatever you want to call it?
To play both the alpha and beta of Endfield.
In
its alpha state, I was hooked. I was full of optimism, and I was wholly convinced that it would be my favorite game of all time.
Good visuals equals brain happy.
Thankfully, not the base. It's even better than before, and it has a ton of room to grow and become much deeper. Of course, even though the base has a very obvious target audience, with the nature of it being a gacha game, there will inevitably be those who are simply addicted to account progression as gameplay, and will play games they would otherwise have zero interest in. Just
need to add gacha animations like Woo-Wah.
Those players,
yeah, I wouldn't go miss.
Simplify the gameplay, which would only annoy its fans and still wouldn't be good enough for the gacha addicts. They instead created these wacky inflatable tube guys, which you then have to murder in cold blood.
These guys are so random. I love them.
Which unlocks a bunch of tutorials for it. They are quite possibly the most needlessly hand-holding tutorials I've ever had to do. But I don't mind their existence.
The game does go heavy into these, to be fair.
At all, if it means they can keep cooking and make it deeper, more complex, and even more fun and satisfying in the future. And for those who are hoping for just another account progression dopamine machine, who lament the mere thought of meaningfully engaging with the base at all, fear not, there is actually an easy solution. Don't play it.
I do think, though, the base system is going to filter a lot of people. I think you want complexity and nuance, but I think there has to be an attempt to, like, bring in the other kind of gamer as well. Personally, I think if you want to get that maximum, you know, reach, but it doesn't need to be compromised. You know, I don't want that to happen too much. I don't want them to reel back just to, like, try and appeal to most people and end up appealing to nobody. You know, the balance has got to be right. The balance has got to be right.
Unfortunately, though, in spite of everything I've mentioned so far, Enfield has made what I feel are very significant mistakes. Pretty much all of them are fixable. These are far from permanent. But in general, beta tests tend to look pretty similar to their full release versions.
This is true. This is true.
So let's dive in. The main story is, to put it bluntly, bad. There's no nuance at all. Landbreakers are completely one-dimensional and uninteresting, just generic bad guys who want you dead. Compare them to Reunion from the Arknights main story. They're introduced to us as fighting for the same goal as Rhodes Island, that being to liberate the infected, but with very different methods. There is a clear conflict. I understand the motivations of the antagonists and how they ended up where they are. Landbreakers have none.
The thing is, I don't want to criticize too much on the story. One, I kind of ignored it a little bit. I want to appreciate it when the game comes out. And two, it depends on how quick things take to boil within the story. Certain things that we see as, like, kind of having no nuance now could open up later on with revelations and such. So I'm not going to be too harsh on those sort of things.
None of this. We also know almost nothing about
I've heard a lot of people having problems with
the main villain, Neferith, who might just be one of the most toothless villains I have ever seen. with the sole exception of one line when you first meet her. She shows up from time to time, says some vague bullshit, and fucks off again. How on earth can this be written by Hypergriff, the same people who gave us Patriot and Tallulah? They can very reasonably fix all of these issues before the game's release, but the alpha story wasn't good either, so I'm not convinced they will. I have no issue with the notion of a simple story well told, but that does not describe Enfield's story at all. And it's not just the writers who are at fault. At one point, Chen refers to Neferith as Nephi, which I found extremely weird. Why is she giving the main villain a friendly nickname? Turns out this is because in every single language except English, Chen says essentially the equivalent of Nefer something or Nefer whatever, because the name went over her head. It's a subtle way of adding to her characterization. Instead, the English translators collectively hotboxed their entire office and decided Chen is actually giving her the kind of cute nickname you'd normally...
Okay, that's fair. That's something that definitely could be changed, though. You know, there is always localization issues in gacha games, you know. But I think that's fair. It definitely does lose a little something, doesn't it? That really
give to close friends. I am astounded at how incompetent this is, but then again, these are the same translators who translated cold to cryo, for no reason in particular, I'm sure. Most of the dialogue is also exasperating.
Sounds cool.
You should feel lucky, because I am the only one who can take care of technical problems like this. Say no more. Stop moving already, and do something about that ether side rupture before it gets any worse.
Guys, writers, please! Is it too much to ask not to be treated like an idiot? Who could your target audience possibly be for this dialogue such that you feel the need to explicitly state the obvious multiple times and make sure everything...
Bro! Paimon just phased it in the background there. Yeah, that is my worry sometimes. I feel like that's what Wuthering Waves did a little bit, you know? Although the community of Wuthering Waves desperately tries to say that it's not trying to relate to the Genshin community, the game does a lot in an attempt to relate to the Genshin community, doesn't it? In the way it does certain things. Which I understand. I get it from a developer standpoint. They're making a product. You've got a product over here that's incredibly successful. It's going to be tempting to think, okay, but that kind of works over there, doesn't it? Should we bring some of that over? Which, again, as I say, having those sort of elements sporadically here and there, and not a bad thing. But I do agree. I think when you've got like the storytelling that I've seen so far in Arknights, and that I've saw through the lore videos and such, they've created such a cool, dark, gritty, varied universe that's really dynamic. I don't want to lose that in this new game. And my worry, I think, sometimes is we've gone to this new planet, and that's a reason for them to be able to realize, right, okay, we're still in this universe, so we can use the IP, but we can shed all of the past from the game. And in that essence, it loses a lot of what would make it really good. So hopefully these are just like teething problems of early storytelling in a game, and this will advance and get better. That's my hope anyway. That's my copium that I'm huffing on, to be fair, because I can see where this is coming from. You know, I can see the points to a degree. And again, I keep saying it, balance is important, isn't it? You know, it's important. If they just copy Arknight's plot want it to be better than what we've seen in Enfield, I think you're always going to have, when you've got like such a plot that seems so nuanced and deep as Arknights, you're going to have people who are just not going to enjoy it. You know, it's not going to live up to what Arknights was. And that's, you know, that's a thing when you make any sort of sequel, anything within that universe. You've got all this previous stuff to try and live up to, haven't you? And they did a good job with all that in Arknights. So it's always going to have a hard time in trying to stand up to that. But yeah, this is probably the biggest worry for me in the game, if I'm honest, is the storytelling. Rather less than the plot points themselves, but the storytelling itself and the world building as well, because they've done an amazing job over in Arknights.
Thing is repeated very slowly for clarity. Oh, motherfucker! Consistent with the emerging trend of disappointing writing, frustratingly are the characters. Not because their writing is bad per se, but because there's just so much wasted potential. For example, Ember is a Sanctor and Shaihi is a Sarkaz. We know from the Arknight story that the Sanctor and the Sarkaz are seemingly always in conflict with each other due to what the Sarkaz see as the Sanctor's betrayal. An image of a Sarkaz and a Sanctor holding hands was very prominent in Arknights' 4th concept trailer as a holy shit moment because its meaning was so significant. Meanwhile, the only mention of something even slightly resembling a connection to this lore is one line in Ember's file saying, The children born and raised in Talos 2 would never learn that angels and sanctum used to carry beautiful meanings in times past. If I'm interpreting this correctly, this is the writer's way of saying that the entire history of Terra, all the extraordinary, catastrophic, mountain-moving events that directly led to Terran races ending up on Talos 2, not important. None of it matters anymore.
Yeah, see, I can see that worry there. Again, this is what I said about this idea of them setting it on this new planet and it allows them to shed all of this weight of the history. I hope they don't do that. I hope they don't do that. And again, I'm going to give them credit and leeway. This stuff might change, you know? That's my copium. I'm huffing, chat.
In the writers. What a monumental waste of such an incredible wealth of lore at your disposal.
What's going on, Krishna?
All that being said, though, I must admit, I do love the fact the resident Australian, Aviwena, says verbatim, "Bird and beast piss? How does it taste like? Crikey fucking bloody oath, Sheila, you piss-drinking cunt." Despite nearly all the writing being a massive letdown, I want to make it explicitly clear the voice actors, thankfully, are actually good at their job, and have done marvelous work with the material they've been given. I'm a huge fan of Aviwena, Dapan, and Wolfguard's regional accents.
Oh, of course. You're the boss. You point the way.
Dad Panda.
Not a problem.
Chat kept coming in and saying he was autistic Dad Panda. That was. I was like, what the fuck?
Leave it to me.
And on top of that, the animations are way more expressive, the models are outstanding, and their idle chatter adds a ton
Idealism is always detached from reality, and it's the first step towards
character models look gorgeous, don't they, man? Damn Surtur looks good. Leviathan, is he?
Also, just one more thing. I am no prude. I am a straight man who plays gacha games. I'm not going to pretend not to like fan service. But guys, holy fuck, relax. Subtlety is dead. Humanity is cooked. Have mercy on my soul. Guide me from the wayward woman, Lord Jesus. Now, as I said before, everything I have mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with that to a point, Leo, as well. Yeah, I think it's a little bit unfair to and what is at the end of the day a beta. It's a vertical slice of gameplay, really less to show off the story and the universe, and it's more to show off where the game's at, isn't it? As really, I know betas are typically a little bit closer to the launch, but typically, well, they used to. If it's Call of Duty, it's just for pre-orders, but usually they're used as a way. Okay, we're in a much more advanced build here. How's it running? How's it play? What are the bugs? How's the combat? How's everything interacting with everything? You know, all these little the components are all brought together. How does it all mingle together and work together? So yeah, I feel like it's a little bit unfair to be like, wow, look at this universe that's been being built for like 5 years to this game that's not even out. It's like, I get what he's saying, I do, and like, as I say, it's a worry of myself. But I think we've got to give him a little bit of time to cook, right? You know, a little bit of time, definitely.
Mentioned so far is fixable. Bad writers can be replaced, and characters can be given good writing later on, which is why all of this is negligible.
Wuthering Waves is a great example.
One issue I have with Arknights Endfield in its beta state, because it is not fixable once it is released. In order to get there, we first need to talk about combat.
All right, okay, interesting.
Combat in Endfield
I'm a big fan of it.
Revolves around skills and skill points. Use a shared SP bar to trigger a battle skill, which in theory triggers a combo skill, which triggers even more of them, and so on. Yep. Combo skills are essentially just...
You can have some real good variety.
Damage. You press E when the prompt shows up, and it gets the neurons going. Basic attack strings essentially serve as the cost of getting a final strike, which is the last hit in the sequence. Final strikes restore SP, so for the most part, you really want to be getting the full sequence of basic attacks to that end. That logic generally applies to the combat as a whole, given the...
Are we going to be talking about the dodge situation? I think that's what we're going to be talking about, yeah. It seems to be the main point of contention for a lot of people. One, it being incredibly tight, and two, it resetting the final strike as well.
The importance of skills, you want to be maximizing SP restoration, hence the prevalence of Arklight in nearly every team composition. Her individual damage may not be anything noteworthy, but her ability to generate SP is excellent, and more SP means more damage. I'm honestly kind of surprised she isn't a 6-star. Now, the beta also adds the ability to dodge. Due to the nature of final strikes being your primary way of restoring SP, you need to commit to the full sequence of basic attacks to get it, which means currently there is still very much a choice every time an enemy attacks you of either dodging or taking the hit, and the dodge is often not the best move. But it still gives me cause for concern. Future 6-stars are inevitably going to be designed to take advantage of more and more gameplay mechanics. Right now, the dodge only exists as a means of survival rather than facilitating damage. But if a dodge exists in any capacity, there is a very real danger of them leaning much further into it by, say, having a 6-star with a combo skill triggered.
Okay, alright. Okay, I see where he's coming from there. Triggering off dodges, SP regeneration, all that sort of stuff. Not interrupting, not resetting the final strike and stuff. Okay.
By a dodge, and then more units with kits centered around dodging who synergize with that 6-star, and a new 6-star whose basic attacks don't get interrupted by the dodge, and before long you'll end up with a player base wanting more and more action, understandably seeking to flex their ADHD action gamer reflexes as their expression of skill. But with Enfield's base building being the way it is, and with the fact that they didn't dumb down the actual substance of the base building at all since the alpha, the vision the Enfield team had was clearly aimed at the kind of player who likes to obsess over details, who may not necessarily want some.
Part of me thinks that maybe it won't necessarily have to lean into that dodge stuff, and it's more around building the actual synergy with your team, so you can tank hits, and that just not be necessarily some. But then again, though, with certain combat, you're not going to be able to do that on the more difficult end. So I can see the worry, but I think maybe potentially it just not resetting your final strike, or at least a perfect dodge doesn't. So just spamming dodge is not a good thing to do. You're punished for it, because I think you should be. But at the same time, maybe perfect dodges, that allows you to continue combinations and get your final strikes and stuff like that. I think that will be a good middle ground for me, because I kind of like how punishing the dodges, and you have to make these decisions, and it makes you, it's less reactive combat. And I said this before, it's more proactive. You have to think about things a little bit rather than just being like something like Wuthering Waves, where it's like, right, it's all about your reaction time and being reactive in the combat.
Something based on reflexes, but instead something more strategic, controlled and precise. The base obviously appeals to this kind of player, while the combat has ended up with a sort of identity crisis. Unsure of what it really wants to look like, trying to be a bit of everything while never actually excelling at any of them.
I don't think I agree with that necessarily. I don't know if it's got an identity crisis. I definitely don't think it's trying to do everything and excelling at nothing personally. I think the combinations and the skill triggers and all that sort of stuff have done it incredibly well personally. And the combat feels like really satisfying when you start to chain things together, especially when you start experimenting. I think that's going to be a key factor in this game, is experimentation is going to be big. I feel like guide channels are probably going to have a field day with this game when it comes out in planning things and trying things out and stuff like that. Again, the only thing for me personally where I can see like, okay, it's a little bit of I'm like, I don't know where to land on it, is the dodge situation. I feel like that could be tweaked. Everything else, though, I feel like it's kind of fine, man. The combat's kind of a massive W. I really like the combat, actually.
Most of the strategy comes from the team comps rather than the execution. The actual process of triggering combos and doing damage and so on, while satisfying for a while, is very easy. Use a battle skill or two, do your basic attack string, face tank smaller hits, use combo skills on cooldown, and repeat. I quickly exhausted every single possibility for improvement, and even self-limiting clears like duos and solos are not at all challenging. I died more often to platforming than to enemies. This is mostly due to the current cast of enemies lacking any real variety or complexity. Sure, it will.
This is something that I don't necessarily worry about. I feel like after launch, well, I hope there will be plenty of more difficult content. I wouldn't expect us to be seeing that sort of stuff anyway. And again, this is a perfect thing why betas exist. All these can be tweaked, really, to be fair.
Improve with time, but the state of the game at launch has real implications for the future of the game. Hypergriff has been through these motions before. Today, more than 5 years after its launch, Arknights is known for its meaningfully challenging endgame modes, to the point of Chinese universities hosting nationwide Arknights tournaments with thousands of dollars in prize money.
That's wild.
I've kept playing for all these years because Arknights has such a rich endgame and high skill ceiling, but for a long time it didn't. When it first launched, the most interesting gameplay it had to offer was Chapter 4. It took them years to make
I think to a degree that, well, actually I'm going to say this, I don't think it's fair to compare, if we're talking about like difficulty and strategy and replayability, well, not even replayability, because it depends on what you enjoy, a tower defense strategic game to a action-orientated combat game. Because at the end of the day, once you start to learn the mechanics, skill mechanics in any sort of action game anyway, everything's just going to click. It's going to be easier, isn't it? But when it comes to a more strategy game, now, of course, obviously some people are going to be better than others and things are going to click as well. But I feel the limit of difficulty and variance it's almost limitless, isn't it, really? Where unless you just make, you know, you get down to the line of being like, then like, oh, you either have super aggressive enemies, you have like HP inflation. I think that's what devs get stuck on in the end. You tend to have games leaning into massive HP inflation, damage bullet sponges, all this sort of stuff, just aggro characters that don't have blockable attacks and, you know, just artificial difficulty. You know what I mean? Artificial difficulty. I don't even think we could talk about this sort of stuff yet. The game's not even out. You know what I mean? Again, the difficulty of the game and its replayability, I don't think we can fairly speak on. It's massive speculation. I will say, though, I can understand what he's saying. I do get where he's coming from. I just, you know, the proof will be in the pudding, really, with this one.
Integrated strategy is a permanent game mode. But the difference is, Arknights didn't offer anything else in terms of gameplay. There was nothing else to play the game for.
This is kind of par for the course with gacha games, though, isn't it?
Have regressed into doing the same thing by making it frustratingly shallow in its launch state. But doing so this time is a critical mistake. Okay. Those who are looking for strategic depth will not find it. It is pathetically easy, and it will remain that way for at least the first 6 months or so. Which means once those players have completed their bases, which really doesn't take that much time, they may not stick around for that long. But those who are looking for action will get plenty of it from daily and weekly gameplay, regardless of the difficulty. The ability to dodge not only gives those action-seeking players their daily dose of dopamine, but also significantly diminishes the need for healing. If their overworld healing needs can be met with items you can craft directly from the backpack, and a 4-star like Snowshine can provide literally all my healing needs with room to spare anyway, what reason does the action-seeking player have to engage with the base at all? The outposts are optional. All they need at that point is some components to make gear. This, combined with the lack of strategic depth in its launch state, creates a serious risk of cultivating a majority of players who are exclusively invested in the action gameplay. Now, this will be a controversial take, but I would not be making this video were I not willing to defend it. Okay. I think the best decision Endfield could possibly make after the beta is to remove the dodge entirely.
Okay. He wasn't lying when he said controversial. I'm curious to see how he backs this up.
Hypergriff's development decisions will be driven by what players want, and if the vast majority of players aren't engaging with the base, the game's evolution will reflect that. This is my #1 issue with the game. They are creating a precarious combination of action gameplay in the combat alongside the slower gameplay of the base. We already have an example of such a precarious combination in a gacha game failing to hold in Zenless Zone Zero's TV mode. It is an action game. It was advertised as an action game. Lo and behold, the action gamers didn't like the TV mode, and Hoyoverse decided to all but kill the TV mode entirely. The
TV mode, for me, it was just implemented badly. I think the idea, the TV mode actually has applications that could be really fun in terms of like mini games, all that sort of stuff, and there's some cool little mechanics within the TV mode. They just use it as a vehicle for telling the story and advancing you from area to area. It was just implemented in the worst possible way, and it made everybody hate it. I feel like if it had just been this little side thing to do little fun mini games, I think people might have enjoyed it a little bit more. It was just terribly implemented and used in the worst possible way and was just so frustrating and meandering to do in between the segments of like fun action combat. It was like such a you know, a juxtaposition of like this super fast fluid gameplay and then into this like, what are we doing here kind of thing, like, you know? So for me, like, again, I don't mind doing little TV elements in ZZZ if it's totally off to the side and it's more done in a mini-game format, personally.
Difference, though, is that Zenless Zone Zero was built from the ground up around its dodge and parry mechanics. It is fundamentally an action game. That is where its strengths lie, and that decision was an act of leaning further into those strengths. Endfield, on the other hand, has been built from the ground up around the base, yet it is taking clear steps towards action gameplay. Obviously, they aren't going to kill off the base entirely, you might as well announce end of service at that point, but I am convinced Endfield is sleepwalking into doing something not all that far removed. Okay. If the game cultivates a player base who are seeking action, then as more and more regions are introduced, each one asking the player to build a new base from scratch, those action-seeking players will complain, and being the majority of the player base, there is a serious danger of Hypergriff pivoting to action.
Okay, so I can see what he's talking about here when he's talking about the actual player. There will be that player that's like, I'm here for the action, not here for the base. And you'll have that sort of player that's like, I really enjoy the base system. I'm not really here for the action. I think we're selling players short a little bit, though. There's a lot of players who play games for a variation of reasons, and sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of both in a game. I can see what he's saying, though. You know, when you're trying to, you know, play to all audiences, again, you're trying to please everyone, you end up pleasing nobody. But for me, personally, what I saw, I feel like the balance was mostly good. There were times when it did feel like it slowed down a little bit. So I feel like that needs to be tweaked, but I can see where he's coming from to a degree here, to be fair. It is a system where you've got two opposing styles of gameplay, you know what I mean? But let's get to what he's talking about, the dodge here. I'm curious where the dodge relates to this conversation.
For that reason. And we have already seen that Hypergriff is perfectly willing to let you sidestep most of the strategy in their strategy game, so long as you pay up. But for the same reason Hoyoverse's attempts at strategy have been absolute dogshit, Hypergriff would not even hold a candle to developers with mature and polished action gameplay systems. Removing the dodge and doubling down on strategic gameplay solves this problem and gives them the space to build on Enfield's strengths and create something truly phenomenal. It is by far the best decision they can make for the longevity of the game. Instead, they are trying to steer it in two different directions simultaneously.
Okay, alright. See, personally, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that. But I think I can see where he's coming from, and I think for a lot of players, that actually might be a good thing, in that it is taking the combat, which is still action, but leaning a lot more into the strategy side of things. But again, it's this idea that I think there's plenty of gamers out there who like a bit of both, you know. They like a bit of the spiciness and the, you know, the mayo, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's a terrible analogy. Like a bit of mayo, like a bit of spice, you know what I mean? Sometimes I like both together. Sometimes I like just the one. I don't know. But yeah, I do think there will be a part. This is where I say I do think there might be potential parts of this player base that get filtered. You know, the people who are coming over from, say, let's say something like Wuthering Waves, I think they're going to come over, probably get filtered by the combat style anyway, and then definitely get filtered by the bases. And then there will be the people who are like, oh man, cool, you got this really cool base system that's going to get filtered by the combat. But then I think there's going to be a lot of people who enjoy both. You know what I mean? I think there'll be a genuine audience for this game that enjoys both. But I do understand where he's coming from. I don't necessarily agree with it personally, but I can see that many other players might see the benefit in what he's saying, you know?
One towards that vision they so clearly had a year ago, and one towards appealing to a wider, more general audience. If we're being honest with ourselves though, we all know what general audience really means. Let's not pretend otherwise. It means the Hoyoverse audience. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with playing Hoyoverse games. This
Bro, the music kicking when he says the Hoyoverse audience.
does not mean every single Hoyoverse fan ever. The problem is with those who do not see each game as having a unique identity appealing to different kinds of players, but rather they see 3D anime RPG gacha game as a genre in itself. And yes, that does include you, Wuthering Waves fans. Hoyoverse and Kuro games both have their roots in action gameplay, while Hypergriff's roots are in strategy.
Well, actually, Kuro really has its roots in bullet hell gameplay, really. Was it Twin Tail Battlegrounds? Really? Oh, yeah.
And yet, there are still those who make the argument that trying to be like Genshin or like Wuthering Waves or whatever is a good thing because they're the most popular gacha, and for some reason, popularity is the only thing that matters to these people. I'm going to make what may seem like a strange analogy at first, but just trust me on this.
Hey, I like strange analogies.
Style, released in 2012,
oh my God,
was a global
Dark Days.
phenomenon. It
Dark
became
Days.
the first video to reach 1 billion views on YouTube, and just like that, the Korean pop industry was catapulted into the mainstream. More than a decade after that phenomenon, do we now have a thriving industry consisting solely of songs that are like Gangnam Style? Sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? Psy did not stumble upon some magic formula for success which can be repeated forever with the right balance of ingredients, and Psy has explicitly said this himself.
You know, I cannot call this success because this is called phenomena, and which means I don't do anything. People do it, right? So this was by people, not by me.
K-pop is the Leviathan of...
So he's saying there, like, cultural moments happen, you know. That's why there's plenty of songs that have been one-hit wonders, haven't they? That came out at the right moment, hit right, and they blew up. And that'll continue to happen. Okay.
An industry it is today, not because everybody copied Gangnam Style,
and that was 13 years ago.
People
Holy
took
cow.
advantage of the opportunities Gangnam Style opened up. Fast forward to 2020 and Genshin Impact becomes a global phenomenon, catapulting gacha games into the mainstream. MiHoYo put some forward-thinking people at the wheel, quickly built a brand identity, renaming themselves HoYoverse, and now, 5 years later, HoYoverse has found unfathomable sustained success. But again, this is not because they found some magic formula, but because they took advantage of the opportunities brought about by the phenomenon that was and is Genshin Impact. This is what people so often miss when they insist that
I don't know, man. They did come up with a pretty decent formula to rinse people, though, that's for sure.
Every gacha game needs to be like some other gacha game.
I think this is a fair
Of course,
point, though.
this is no concern for enlightened and experienced 3D anime RPG gacha game enthusiasts like ourselves. I'm sure our judicious and learned beta testers have provided invaluable feedback to the developers. Shall we peruse a few of them?
Alright, let's go.
Dash feels underwhelming. It should be more forgiving and have more iframes. It's not to my liking because of my action RPG experiences.
You don't say! Game needs a proper dodge, and anyone who says otherwise is coping. A quick look around the gacha space makes this abundantly clear.
Although, these are very surface level takes, you will find this argument outside the gacha space. You know, you'll see a lot of people be like, it's 2025 and the game doesn't have a perfect dodge, you know, or a good dash dodge system. You will genuinely find that. That's not just a gacha complaint, man. That's a complaint again in a lot of action games.
Not being able to dodge cancel makes the overall combat loop feel unsatisfying because you're
I
forced
had a
to
lot of
take
people
hits
saying that
that
as
could
well.
have been avoided. Yeah, dodging definitely needs rework, like larger iframes for casuals and consecutive dodges, and dodges not breaking your basic attack combo, and more dodging distance, and making dodges more rewarding, and make SP boss 4 instead of
Fucking hell. Like, for me, the only one that I can really think of is I just think perfect dodges. When you start a perfect dodge, have proper perfect dodges that don't reset the final strike, you know, and that way then it gives you a reward for hitting a dodge at the right time in the right place and to continue, and you get a benefit from it. You know what I mean? For me, I think that'd be more than fine. I do. What do you guys think?
3. It would make combat faster.
Please make normal attacks more powerful.
I don't think combat
and
needs to be
also make
faster.
Each hit give SP, and also stagger, and also please give SP whenever I dodge. Also, please make dodges use less stamina. Also, so far so good.
Can I just have 100% SP all the time,
Are
please?
missing like iframe rolls and parrying and deflecting. Hey, remember
Why have we
what I
gone
said about
French?
players wanting more and more action if a dodge exists?
Make SP boss 4 instead of 3, and make it recharge faster.
Right now, there's no incentive to swap to another character during combat. It cancels the animation.
The only thing I did say was, what is it you started off with? Was it 2 dodges and then you got to 3, like not too far in? I was saying that maybe the game should have started off with 3 dodges. You started off with that 1 extra dodge off the get-go, maybe, you know what I mean? That's when the defender will be needed when you can't dodge. Right, this is what I was saying before. It's why I'm kind of torn on the whole dodge system, because, like, okay, I get it. I understand that, you know, it could benefit in a certain way, but then I'm like, but the way the game's built, and it being less about being reactive and being more proactive, you build your team kind of round that. And sometimes, you know, you're being smart with your SP and your skills and triggering at the right time and using the right synergy, if you will, to not have to be in that position, I guess. Again, I am a little bit torn on it, though. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I don't want it to be like Wuthering Waves, man. You know, I don't. This is why my worry is that you've got the Genshin community, the Neo Genshin community, which is majorly the Wuthering Waves community, are going to be like, nah, bro, this is how combat should be. And it's like, no, Wuthering Waves is an awesome combat, probably the best action combat in Gacha, right? But not every combat system has to be the same. Otherwise, then we've just got a bunch of games that are the same, and nothing feels individual or fun on itself, does it? You know what I mean?
And doesn't change the position. I hope they make it more like Wuthering Waves. Oh, here we go, boys. Buckle up. Combat's already way better than with the technical test. Being too different will scare new players away. They changed it from the technical test for a reason. But this is my view as someone who's played lots of recent gacha games like Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero, and Wuthering Waves, but never the original Arknights. By the way, there is Girls Frontline 2 for a more top-down strategic approach, which is exactly why I'm not playing it.
Oh, that is a frustrating take. Okay, this is why, you know, it's good to have smart people working for your game because they can look at that and go, yeah, chuck that in the bin. We're not listening to this guy. We're not listening to this guy.
Options in the competitors I've played. Genshin Impact. The game should tell me which weapon to put on my character, like in Zenless Zone Zero. Also, the game should tell me which gear to put on my character, like in Zenless Zone Zero. Overworld exploration.
Here's a hand. Do you want me to put it on your shoulder? I'll hold it. I'll hold it. Do you want to hold hands? Let's do it then. Okay.
Feels kind of slow. A good example of how to make it better would be Wuthering Waves. Right now, this feels
one thing I will say. What do you guys think to this? A mantle. Do you think a mantle animation would be okay in the game? Right? What would you reckon? You know, because there's a few times when you're trying to get up certain places. And you can get up, but just sometimes you don't necessarily get it right and you're kind of hitting your shins and you fall back down and then you manage to get it. Wouldn't it be nice sometimes to just have a mantle animation, you know? I feel like it's just, for me personally anyway, I don't know why, you know, you know, obviously if it's a jump that you're not supposed to be able to get over, okay, I understand that sometimes that can cause issues, but we just need a bike, that's all. We do need to be able to build a bike. I would like that as well. Yeah, I agree.
Certain game where the combat is you running around and combining different skills to get the reaction. Damn, that's crazy.
They have to redesign the map for that because a lot of puzzles rely on you not having it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, you might, maybe, yeah. Because I was speaking about this before. Like, possibly, maybe, I don't know, maybe.
Easy, I wonder why. Jump feels too short and floaty. It would be great to increase the height or allow a double jump. They would have to redo all the geometry. What do you mean? This is especially important because of improvements to exploration the competition has been making. Oh, will you please fuck off? It would be great if they considered adding...
I actually made a video about that, about the exploration, because Tecton had said it was shit, and I was just like, I disagree, and I made a video. And Tecton didn't like it, so I had to make another video replying to him because he commented on the video. And I think his view was, why don't you just make a video, your own video, instead of replying to somebody else's opinion? And I was like, that's kind of what you do a lot of the time, to be fair. But anyway, I disagreed with the exploration being shit personally because I felt like it was in the context of the map and the world design and the way the game's built and what it's trying to be. I think it kind of worked. Do you know what I mean, personally? And as I said before, the fact that you have to figure out how to get through different places by doing certain things, you know, using the environment to get up, you know, those little platforms you can hop around sometimes to get over an electric fence that's locked off. It makes those sort of things feel significant, where in a game like Wuthering Waves where you can just wall run and double jump over something, that's no longer significant. So a chest being on this area is just, oh, let me just wall run up it and I'll grab it kind of thing, which is good. But at the same time, it's nice to have those little, like, old school sort of platformy thing of, like, how do I get to that thing? And, oh, shit, I can go up and over there and drop down kind of thing. That makes it feel more significant to me, personally. Neo, what's going on, dude? Welcome to the stream.
Platforming abilities.
The idea of Enfield being more methodical just sounds right. Exactly, easy breezy.
It's one of
agree.
the fun aspects of open world games. It's not an open world game, for crying out loud. All the big open world gacha games let you carry over the pity. So this system will not bode well for most of the mainstream gacha community. Well, they can bloody well fuck off then. People need...
Yeah, bro, man. People got so triggered about the banner system, and I feel like there was me and a few other content creators were actually a little bit sane about it. It was like, hold on, let's look at this first. This could actually, you know, be good if copies are inconsequential, if characters go into the spook pool, all this sort of stuff, and it seems like that's a case, and it seems like it's potentially in the way the weapon system works, sounds like it might be a really good system, but people heard, what, doesn't carry over? What, not a 50-50 on the weapons or a guarantee? Oh, and people just went mental, you know? It was just like, relax a little bit, man. Chill out. This actually might be a decent system for you, especially if you're free to play or a low spender.
To learn how to skip banners. This is stupid advice. Just look at this example from You just wanted to be more like
From Genshin.
And they're the most popular gacha, period. Not carrying over the guarantee in a game competing with...
This is the dude who looks at the revenue charts and goes, well, obviously, Love and Deep Space is the best gacha, right? It's clearly, objectively, has the best systems, the best gameplay, the best story, the best everything, because it's the top, bro. Come on.
I only build up pity if there is a character I really want dupes for. The concept of dupes is already questionable. Looking at Genshin... I know very few people that play Arknights, but dozens that play Hoyo and Kuro games. This is a lie. You know people who play one Kuro game. It is Wuthering Waves specifically. Don't fucking lie to me! It's about what your competition does in business. Oh my god, you people are insufferable.
I keep pulling after I get the character to build pity, but that's now a mistake in this game.
You have a gambling addiction! Building pity is not a thing! In my ideal gacha system, there is no...
It is right, though. We've been groomed to go for a quick, cheeky chip away. Let me chip away. You know, at 1 pull here, 5 pulls there. Hey, I fell victim to it. I do it all the time. I call them broke boy pulls, you know. I call them broke boy pulls, where I'm like, oh, I've got 160 asteroids. Let's go. I might get lucky. You know, this game is just creating a system that's like, that's not smart to do that. Hey, if you want to think the game's calling you stupid for doing it like that, then get offended. But if you're a little bit more patient with your pools, you're going to have a good time here and do things a lot cheaper as well. No, what? Were you saying the consumer's stupid and greedy?
50-50 system at all. Just a banner with X pulls to get it guaranteed, and a higher chance to get it at X pulls. This is literally the Enfield system, you idiot!
Mark my words, if this system goes live with no changes, the player base from competitors of this game will absolutely not play long term.
Bear in mind, by the way, this is just from the Discord server. There will be far more of this in the private feedback surveys.
Oh, yeah.
I want to highlight one more post.
Wait till you've dived into Reddit a little bit as well, and comment sections on your favorite content creators' YouTube channels.
However, in which 2 testers state similar concerns to mine and are met with a rather depressing response.
Okay.
The first tester says, currently there are a lot of action elements, but the battles don't feel exciting. I think the battle system in the technical test might be more enjoyable.
Interesting. I didn't play it, so I can't say.
These games are more refined, and the current system just feels like an inferior version of them, which is just annoying. The second
hold up a second. Hold up. I need to... What was that second statement? When it comes to action, other companies' games are more refined, and the current system just feels like an inferior version of them, which is just annoying. I'd like to know what other games this person speaking about. Not saying the wrong, but I'm curious to what they're talking about there. I would have liked some examples to really kind of maybe formulate an opinion on that. Can't really say. It's kind of it's a very generalized statement, that is. You know, it's kind of vague.
More refined, and the current system just feels like an inferior version of them, which is just annoying. The second agrees. There are some opinions that it's plain compared to other games, but Enfield is differentiated from others and is interesting in its own way. Yep. So I don't want it to be swayed by those opinions and make it feel too action-oriented.
Agree.
If the dodge
this happened to Wuthering Waves, you know. China was like, nah, man, we want the power of friendship, so they gutted the story. And I think Wuthering Waves was worse off for it.
Too lenient, it'll just become a dodging action game.
Agree with this. I agree with this.
While the third tester, eloquently summing up the vast majority of the feedback, says...
Do you know what? This is a little bit, I guess it's kind of a reflection of the gacha space. I'm assuming this is Chinese, right? Or is it Japanese? It looks like it's Japanese to me. I can't tell. These look like Japanese. Here, this does, right? Am I tripping? Whatever, anyway. It's Japanese, yeah. These are Japanese symbols, right? These are definitely Japanese. Yeah, okay, yeah. I thought so. I thought this was Japanese. So, again, all of the, to put it nicely, retarded statements were all from EN. Damn, man. We're not escaping the allegations, guys. We're not beating the allegations, guys.
I agree with increasing the action element. The reason is simple. It will attract a wider range of players. This
that's a worry though, isn't it? You don't want to do that.
Asking for the game to be something it's not. They have no concept of carving out a niche in the market, or games having unique identities, or the developers having their own vision. It's all just monthly revenue PvP. It is.
Yeah, JP does generally like Arknights Endfield though. I can understand that though, to be fair, because it's got that sort of like more traditional team JRPG action combat style, hasn't it? You know, Reddit is an unflushed toilet. This is true. This is true. I got one done for our favourite Giga Chad Calchero. Oh, dude, I saw that actually. I saw that. I saw a little bit of that video. I need to watch it fully. I was watching it while I was having a poop, mate.
It is boring. It is exhausting.
It was a quick poop also.
And I lament the apparent reality that Hypergriff seems to be listening to them.
Yeah. I saw this and everybody was, yes, yes. But I was like, I'm a little bit worried here. I'm a little bit worried. I hope that they don't mess with it too much again. I would be fine with a perfect dodge being allowing you to continue on with the final strike, it not resetting. But I'm totally cool with the combat as it is, personally, chat. You know? I just think that maybe the dodge needs tweaking because sometimes it felt like it was inconsistent. That might have just been me, but I saw a lot of people having that issue as well. I don't mind it being punishing. Definitely felt a little bit inconsistent though. I might be tripping there though. It might just be me having a skill issue. Yeah, I hope they don't lean into this too much, man. I was reading through this the other day, actually.
As it stands, the base is the one and
perfect dodge shouldn't cancel your combo, that's all. Yeah, that's what I think. Because then it not only it kind of fixes that element to a degree, but it rewards you for dodging correctly as well, doesn't it? It's a good way to reward you.
Thankfully, the majority of people anticipating the game's release do seem to understand how important the base is for that reason. But while it does have tons of room to grow and become even better, I have become convinced it will not. The most optimistic outcome I can believe in is that new regions will have a new gimmick, like Jinlong's fluids and pipes. You build a new base with it over the course of maybe a few days at most. The vast majority of players will be satisfied, and that's where it will end.
Gacha a lot of people asking for blueprints, isn't there?
Fundamentally, the characters
SP when your perfect dodge is fine.
Simply a vessel through which the product is marketed. But reducing all gacha games to this fundamental is boring. They're fun. There's so much potential.
Not resetting you watch, it's kind of like an SP
games,
gaining it, but doing it in a secondary way, like
to foster thriving communities that conventional games often don't have the lifespan for. Instead, a subset of the communities that already exist are preventing that potential from being realized by consistently pushing new endeavors with unique visions into the same box until they all become homogenized imitations of the same thing.
This is one of my major problems.
Hypergriff needs to decide if they are content with being that imitation.
Again, this has been one of my major problems with Wuthering Waves, but every time you bring it up, the Wuthering Waves community gets kind of mad, you know? They like to talk about when Wuthering Waves differentiates itself from Genshin and how much better it is because it does that, but then when you compare things that the game kind of does similar, I'm like, what do you fucking want, bro? It gives you asteroids, it's more content, and it's like, that mindset will keep us in that box, you know?
Because a game for everyone is a game for no one.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Facts. Spitting. Dude spitting.
There was a moment while playing through the main story, which I think will stick with me for many years. I was thinking about some moments from the alpha, like Fial's desperate attempts to jump onto this ledge because I was standing on it and admiring certain details on the blighted gigaspawns. My boy was caked up. Holy
cheeks!
I happened to be in the Origin Lodespring region at the time, and I noticed why the music for this place in particular felt so eerie. Remember the menu theme I was glazing earlier? Now compare that motif to the music from this part of the map. It invokes a feeling of loss, a feeling of knowing something will never be the same again. And suddenly, I had to stop what I was doing because I was hit with an overwhelming feeling of nostalgia for the alpha.
To be fair, bro's feeling the same element that a lot of people felt with the Wuthering Waves tests, weren't they? Like, you know, it's just, it lost something. It lost something.
Fun tempo.
It's really satisfying, actually. I'm a big fan of it. There's so much potential in what this combat can be.
I believe. I do believe.
The overall storyline, okay. Can write an essay for this. I want the story to have a
Is that an Originium slug?
And let writers take risks.
Agree. Yep.
I'll be disappointed if it's dumbed down and basic.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Too many games don't take risks with the characters and the story.
Angelina!
Angie, that's not how you abuse gravity.
Angie, no. I'm sorry.
The death loop, bro.
I really hope they commit to what they've got here. I think it's sick. Commit to the vision, commit to no dodge and shit. Obviously, like, it needs refining and stuff. But...
You do understand not many people will agree with you.
Yeah, I know. As long as they're actually playing the alpha and understand what the vision is and what it's asking of them, it's totally fine.
See, like,
disagree, like all
this here, I think I can't necessarily disagree with him. Again, as I said, the combat feels great to me, but as somebody who has played it in its previous incarnation, I can't speak on that. I can't say, well, nah, it feels better now than it did. I didn't play it in that version. So, you know, again, I think he's made incredibly valid points in this video. Some I disagree with, but the ones I disagree with, I understand them. Do you know what I mean? I see where he's coming from. And I'm not even saying that, like, he's wrong. It's just from a personal perspective is where I'm saying things. I think on a lot of what he's saying in regards to the greater consumer base, might well be true, actually.
I can reasonably ask of someone is to think for themselves, right?
I can't fucking wait for this game's full release, man.
Same.
This is a technical alpha. It's like a really bare bones version of this game, and it's already like, I've just been unable to put it down.
Some of it can be... Oh, of course, of course.
I'm so excited, dude. I can't wait.
It feels a little weird to talk about it this way because it was literally only a year ago, but I'm making this video in the first place because I need to express how it made me feel. I had so much optimism for what the game could be, but now that optimism is becoming silent lamentation. If Endfield continues on the path it's currently on, every gacha developer with an eye on this game will see the trend. Originality is overrated, and the path to success lies in imitation. The men in suits will take notice, and unique, interesting ideas with oceans of potential will not even see the...
I'm not going to lie, though, man. This does, because this has been the problem with the Western developer space for a while now. And let me be more specific. Big Western developers, the AAA space, you know? The originality is like dying a slow death. Everything is an iteration of an iteration, which is, of course, how things work now. Nothing can be unique, but so closely iterated from previous forms that it really, you know, doesn't feel separate from it. You know, almost feels like it could come off a work line, you know, just literally rolling off. Again, I'm one of those gamers that if there's a good system in a video game over there, right, and if it can make this game better, take that system and add it to this game. If you need to tweak it to make it better, good. But when it comes to settings, stories, storytelling as well, your combat mechanics themselves, let's try and build upon things for sure. And the one thing that I'd really like to see the gacha space take in a different direction on, which Endfield definitely seems like it's doing that, is in terms of like the daily type of mechanics, the material mechanics, the farming side of things, which I feel like Endfield is definitely doing something a little bit different, because when you look at something like Wuthering Waves, a lot of all those things are very similar to previous games, specifically like Genshin and Hoyo's games. You know, so like I am still very much hopeful that Endfield is going to be a game that does that, you know? It's like a quiet contemplation of the potential, but the possible downfall of a game that somebody's passionate about. And I like this, because sometimes I think we have to be mature about the way we talk about video games and understand the possible demise of something and the possible, like, success of it, and have those conversations together without everybody being angry that you're bringing these points up. Again, there's points I disagree with in this video, but I also definitely understand where he's coming from. And I think more of these conversations are better for video games in general, rather than trying to look at like something like I say, like Wuthering Waves, and be like, well, I want the combat to be like that. Can we have that? Just play Wuthering Waves then. Why do you want every other game to be like the game you're already playing? Again, systems coming over are fine, but why do you want to replicate that game elsewhere? At the end of the day, you know, you're just gonna have the same game in a different freaking outfit. I don't want that. I want this game to have some individuality. So again, I definitely don't want them to tweak this dodge system too. That's a big factor for me. I don't want them to mess with that too much. I really don't. I want the combat to definitely lean into strategic action combat rather than reactive action combat, you know?
Light of sunrise. Enfield is a
and I don't want Chinese developers to start doing what Western developers are doing.
Yet, but I am not at all convinced Hypergriff is interested in saving it. What could have been the harbinger of a golden age,
that's a doomy statement,
could instead doom itself to be the death knell of Gacha games.
That's a little dramatic.
I have given every possible piece of feedback I can give to the developers. And so I have done all that I can to convince them to remain faithful to the vision they clearly had. For now, I can only hope the decisions which need to be made will be made by those who are just as enchanted with that vision as I am. And I won't be left wondering what could have been.
And we started dramatic and we're ending dramatic. Right? Okay, so final thoughts. This was a more dramatic point, or presented in a more dramatic way, but I don't disagree about it, you know? I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I also understand, you know, sometimes the writing can be on the wall. We can infer things, can't we? And the worry is, you know, when you've got Wuthering Waves and you've got Genshin and devs overreacting, you know? We saw it with Wuthering Waves, you know? We saw it with the story, what they did there. You had Genshin with its, you know, light-hearted, Disney-fied stuff. Wuthering Waves came along, bit darker, little bit, you know, I hate using the term mature, as if like light-hearted stuff can't be mature, but let's just use that in replace of something else. And people didn't like that, so they're hard reverted and went the opposite way. And I think it did a service to the game. So I can understand the worry of that happening. I think it's a very reasonable thing to be worried about. But on the other hand, I am very, very excited about this game, and I'm hopeful that they're going to do the right thing. Again, proof will be in the pudding. But I think this was a really good video. This was a really good video. I do. I think this was a very good video. So yeah, guys, I'm going to have to subscribe to Tobaruo. This was a good video, actually. I think he made a lot of valid points. Some that I didn't necessarily agree with, but I could see where he was coming from. You know, at the end of the day, you ain't going to agree with everybody and everything, are you? But he made some really, really good points as well that I definitely do agree with. I personally would like to see the dodge stay. Just a little bit more rewarding in potentially. It may be just perfect dodge, allowing me to continue on with the combo. But beyond that, yeah. Again, he's coming from a more educated point because he played it without the dodge. So, you know, he's got a little bit more of the whole picture. Yeah, great video. Banger video, actually, guys. You should definitely check this dude out. That was really, really well made. Eloquently put, researched, took the time to think about what he's got to say as well. And yeah, it was a great video. Absolutely great video, guys.